Now that the draft is over and most of the trades and signings are done, one team has stuck out to me that I'm going to choose for my dark horse contenders, and that team is the Philadelphia Eagles. And in today's video, I'm going to explain why. But first, we need to get on the same page of what we mean by a dark horse contender. There are tiers of teams in the NFL. We have our contenders, we have our playoff lock teams, we have a fringe playoff teams, and then teams that definitely won't make it. A dark horse is someone who I believe isn't unanimously accepted that they will even win their division, maybe not even make the playoffs altogether. But I think even though that they'll be underdogs in essentially every playoff game they go into, they have the team or the play style to win a playoff game, or multiple, or I wouldn't even be surprised if they made or even won a Super Bowl. The Eagles aren't my pick to make it out of the NFC, but I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to be surprised and why you definitely shouldn't be surprised when the Eagles play spoilers to some of the best teams in the league. There's obviously a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. The first thing that made them such a prime candidate for me has to do with the division that they play in. To be a dark horse, you have to get in the dance first of all. In the NFC East, I think the door is wide open without a juggernaut team like the Packers or Rams. This is the easiest way in the playoffs and leaves a lot less things to chance. I think they currently are better than the Commanders and the Giants, but with the Cowboys compared to an Eagles team on the rise and considering both their off seasons, they are already my early pick to win the division, and it's not even that close to me. So looking at the Eagles roster, it is top to bottom so solid with very few holes. Starting on the offensive side of the ball, they have a premier offensive line. They re-signed Jason Kelce to a one-year deal, but they also drafted his replacement in Cam Jurgens via the draft. They have Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson, Isaac Sumalo and Lane Johnson, who can all maul and punish defenses in the run game with zone running schemes and are all athletic and have a ton of success and flexibility, with all five of them being able to pull and block in space. They have a lot of veterans too, so they can pick up all sorts of exotic blitzes, and this is huge when working with a young quarterback. They started their winning streak and completely turned their season around when they leaned into these monsters up front and became a run-heavy team. And they have Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott in the backfield who can all catch the ball downfield, have a really good burst, and enough vision to take advantage of all this great blocking. Not to say that they don't have any threat of passing the ball, because they took a massive step in the right direction in that department as well. They used one of their draft picks in the first round to trade for A.J. Brown to pair with Devontae Smith, who is coming off an incredible rookie season. They still have Quez Watkins, who has blazing speed to stretch the field vertically, a very good tight end in Dallas Goedert, and an underrated signing in Zach Pascal from the Colts, who won't jump off the screen or the stat sheet in any ways, but when watching Colt games, he always seemed to step up and make big plays when they needed a conversion. Now let's talk about Jalen Hurts, who by far is the biggest question mark on this offense and to a lot of NFL fans in general. And for a lot of people, this offense is an elite quarterback away. Or are they? Because I think Jalen Hurts is good enough to win it all, but let me explain. I'm not naive. I don't think Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback. I still see a lot of flaws, like issues with accuracy. He flees the pocket prematurely at times. He can be hesitant on his reads, which forces him to be late and get him in trouble. He's not a perfect quarterback, but he is a quarterback that has traits that are top tier in the league, like the way he runs the ball like a running back and has running back like vision. He has the body and willingness to slide now to protect himself, and he's elite at reading defenses immediately post snap and makes really good decisions in the RPO game. And I have a full video on this if you're curious for some film examples. And he also has a big arm in terms of being able to let it rip deep with air down the field for go balls and deep posts. We saw a lot of his weaknesses exposed at the beginning of the 2021 season when he was being asked to throw the ball 40 plus times. And things started to look bleak, and his time in Philly was questioned after a really bad 2-5 start. But this is when they started to look like a completely different team. They started leaning into the run game and using Jalen Hurts' running ability. They started getting him in a rhythm early with RPO plays and hitting defenses over the top with the deep ball when they started to condense the field. They started throwing it around 25 times per game, and this is how they finished the season with a 6-2 final stretch and make the playoffs, albeit against lesser competition competition, but the idea of their newfound success was being seen working against good defenses too, like the Broncos and the Saints. So where I am with Jalen Hurts is he's still a limited young quarterback that has some elite traits, but if they continue to play into his abilities, they can be a highly potent offense. But not only this, I don't see him being capped at where he is now. And just think about this, because so luckily for him, the things that can't be trained easily, he has. He has the speed and the vision like a running back. But for example, Tom Brady could train around the clock and never be the athlete that he is. But accuracy, staying in the pocket, going through progressions in a drop back style can be learned with time. So as he is, he can be successful with what he does. But where he's limited, I think there's still hope that he can take that next step. And now he has a ton of pieces to fit his current strengths. He would be a really bad quarterback in my opinion if he didn't have this offensive line that gives him such a deadly rushing attack, and if he didn't have weapons like Devontae or AJ Brown who can win one-on-one matchups quickly with the RPO offense that helps him crutch a lot of his weaknesses in a normal passing game. But since he does have all of these things, his play style is now an asset to the team and not a liability. So I think the Eagles roster offensively is in a really good spot because they know who they are, they know what they're good at, and they have all the pieces that elevate specific play styles. But before we talk about the defense, let's talk about why offensively they could play spoilers in a playoff game. And for a real life example, let's look to the 49ers, who just made it to the NFC Championship game last season and the Super Bowl 2 years prior. They have been the underdogs in almost every one of these games they've been on these runs. You can neutralize a great offense like they did against the Cowboys and the Packers last year by playing defense with your offense. Dak Prescott and Aaron Rodgers cannot show how good they are or how explosive their offense is if they're standing on the sidelines. And the Eagles, with their run game and a highly efficient short passing game, they can have these double-digit play drives that can milk almost an entire quarter off the clock. Even if it ends up with a field goal, this can hinder the opposing team's offense from ever getting into some sort of a rhythm. But this is only half of it. And I'll be honest, I might be even more impressed with how their defense is built. But let's talk about the Eagles defense before we can put everything together. Now, I know I just hyped up their offense for a few minutes straight, but again, pointing to the 49ers, you have to have an elite defense if you want this niche sort of offense to work. Even in the Super Bowl, #1 offenses typically lose to #1 defenses. You can't have a Swiss cheese defense that puts your offense right back on the field. This is a recipe for disaster. And in the 2021 season, the Eagles had a very good defense. They were 6th best in the leagues in yards per rushing attempt, 8th best in the leagues in yards per passing attempt, and 11th in total passing yards allowed. But the true story about this Eagles defense is what they did in the draft and free agency. Not only the pieces, but how they're going to play together and how they're going to be so much fun to watch at all 3 levels. They have 2 man-to-man clampy corners, super fast linebackers who cover sideline to sideline. They can also cover and be lightning out of a bottle when they get sent on a blitz. And even though they sacrifice some size at linebacker for this type of speed, they have massive defensive front to counter for the run game. But let's dig deeper. Fletcher Cox has been a plug in the middle of this defense for a decade now that even the strongest Drano couldn't unclog, and he's been a huge part of this team's impressive run defense. So that's why I was so sad that they had to release him, and immediately when I saw this, my thought was that they would trade up in the draft to get Jordan Davis as his replacement. But just 2 days later, they agreed to a 1-year deal with veteran Fletcher Cox, stayed at their current draft pick, and still got the freak of nature college football defensive player of the year in Jordan Davis. Are you kidding me? These are 2 guys that can play 3 technique and in, both command a double team in any sort of interior run game, and have proven that 2 isn't even enough sometimes. And staying with the draft, I thought Nakobe Dean was the best linebacker in the draft. Now, I'll be honest, the injury 1000% confuses me. It's the only reason he fell to the 3rd round, and pending on his status, the Eagles could look really foolish for taking him here compared to the other 31 teams. But if he can be healthy and be the player he was at Georgia, this might be the steal of the entire draft. He is so fast and he has great instincts, which allows him to play even faster. He can cover tight ends and running backs, and man, he comes screaming off blitzes. And in the run game, he's not great at shutting linemen who can get to the second level and square up on him. That's one of his major flaws, but he uses his side-to-side speed to out-pursue the angles and beat them to the spot. But now that he's on the Eagles, the linemen will have a much harder time getting the second level unless they want to leave Cox or Davis one-on-one. Again, they got people that just play so well together. They also brought in Kazir White from the Chargers, another hybrid linebacker who plays in space, has more potential playing downhill, and they're both going to be joining one of the least talked about and one of the most underrated linebackers in the entire league, in my opinion, in TJ Edwards. The only thing that they were missing in the box was an elite pass rusher. They have the big boys up front for the run, extremely athletic and rangy linebackers, but oh yeah, they added a 15 sack guy in Hassan Reddick from Carolina. Their front seven is going to cover so many bases and be so versatile in every aspect of defending the run, on paper at least. But now let's look to the back end of things. They've had Big Play Slay, which was a huge pickup for them a couple years ago, but looking at the landscape of free agents, top tier wide receivers and DBs this offseason have been getting bagged up. And somehow the Eagles managed to get a Pro Bowl cornerback in James Bradbury to sign a 1-year, $10 million contract, now having two corners that travel the entire field to cover the other team's wide receiver one. This is so rare to have on the same team, but it's a luxury you can have when you have a quarterback on a rookie deal. Having these corners will allow them to be a lot more aggressive up front and sending a ton of pressure, which speeds up the quarterback's mental clock, and still be able to hold up on the back end in man coverage. And having linebackers that can close space in a hurry and tackle in the open field to minimize the damage if the quarterback finds his check down, this defense is going to be so much fun to watch. Hassan Reddick probably has to get double teamed or at least chipped when rushing. Cox and Davis more than likely having to be double teamed on any getting run and play. So they have not only constructed a defense with a lot of talent, but they did it in a way that created so much synergy that they complement each other's play styles so well. Now, let's start to tie everything together. One, they are in a very winnable division, which qualifies them because you have to get to the playoffs first. They have a punishing run game and a quarterback that can pull it and run the other way on quarterback counters and read options. They now have wide receivers that can win one-on-one matchups in their RPO and short game and then fly down the field when the defense goes to one high. They can control the clock, and not only that, let's say in the playoffs they run into a team with a great offense but an average defense, they can actually run up the score while doing so. Their defense is fast, they have great coverage potential, and they're huge and athletic up front where they need to be to match even the league's best rushing attacks. I think the Eagles realized who they are as a team, they know who their quarterback is, and they brought in and drafted positions to match that only elevate their playing style. And this puts them, come playoff time, that they're going to be mentioned as a hard out. Now let's say the first round matchup in the NFC, they get the Packers, Rams, or Cardinals. Do I expect them, or do I think they should be favored going into one of these games? No, because going back to the beginning, this is what separates from being a contending category in my eyes. But would I be surprised if they beat the Packers, the Cowboys, the Rams in the first round, or two of them? Or even make the Super Bowl, or even win the Super Bowl? Do you think any of those teams are going to be excited to pull the Eagles in the first round matchup, who are going to be the underdogs with nothing to lose and you can be easily exploited if you don't play your best? The answer to all those questions are no. I think this is far from an overreaction to say all of this because of the new additions they made. I think it's a proper reaction because when you look back at what they already had, see what their play style is, and see who they added and how they're going to make them better, this is where I see them now. So they're not my favorites to win it all. They're not even in my top few to make it out of the NFC. But we all know that NFL is all about parity, matchups, and so many variables. And if any team goes on this unexpected run, this is why they're my pick. And they didn't get a Russell Wilson or a Deshaun Watson and win free agency in that sense of getting a top 10 quarterback, but they did nickel and dime their way, getting great draft picks, great free agents, keeping key players from the year before, And now we step back and look at the magnitude of their additions. I think it's equal to compared to these teams that got their new quarterbacks. And I think the Eagles, maybe not as much in the regular season, I think, but come playoff time, this is going to be one of the hardest outs you could imagine. But that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure to like this video if you like videos like these. Make sure to comment down below what you think about the Eagles. And for me, the Eagles are kind of in it for the long term. I do expect them to win their division, but I think during the regular season, they're going to be playing out, kind of getting used to each other with all their new pieces. But come playoff time, just with how good their defense is and how they can milk the clock on offense, this is why I think they're going to be my dark horse contenders. But make sure to subscribe if you enjoy daily sports content. I appreciate you guys so much for checking out the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace.